It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline. Brought to you by the Golden Nugget with sports director Tony Miller.
Money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Presented by WagerTalk.com.
And here we go, the Friday edition of the Las Vegas Sportsline. Today's show is brought to you by the Golden Nugget, first portion of the show anyway, and then we'll have Station Casinos at the bottom of the hour. Aaron Kessler from the Nugget will join us in just a little bit. Us being Teddy Covers, Ted Savransky's here. I'm Dave Cokin. Ari Platinum is the producer of the show. I did do an outline for today's show, but I am scrapping the entire outline. I want to spend the entire hour talking about the Red Sox with the easy win over Northeastern today in exhibition baseball. We're off and running.
And I thought we were going to spend the whole hour talking about Robert Kraft.
No, Inflategate. Right? Would that be what this is called?
It just shows. It doesn't matter how much money you have. We all want the same thing. Everybody wants some.
I've seen some great lines. Some absolutely great lines people coming up with.
What do you got?
I think the best one I've seen so far, at least my personal preference, is that Kraft allegedly said to the woman in question, "I want you to finish me off like Brady finished off the Rams." That was pretty good.
Sure. And, you hate to laugh about it, but you have to.
Why not? I don't hate to laugh about it. It's funny as hell.
Well, yeah, sure, but it's somebody else. It's purely somebody else's misfortune. You know what I mean?
That's his problem. Listen, I mean, if you're Robert...
That right there's the East Coast attitude, 100%.
If you're Robert Kraft, are you kidding? You going to a massage parlor?
That's what I'm
Come
saying.
on.
Everybody's got the same,
Just call somebody, get in call or whatever. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. You're Robert. What, they're not going to recognize you?
I don't know.
He's a pretty famous guy.
Sure, but I don't know necessarily that the people who are working at the day
I don't know.
spa
A lot of
that he
people
was
watch the Super
frequenting.
Bowl.
A lot of people don't watch.
I don't know. I've never seen a demographic breakdown among massage parlor workers as to whether they work the Super Bowl or not. Could be something worth studying. There we go. Okay. All right. Anyway, on to less funny things. I forgot to put this in the rundown as well. That's a pretty good game for the Lakers last night. They look like they're going to get trampled in the basketball game, and then something happened.
Well, the thing that happened was that the Rockets didn't get away with a whole lot in terms of officiating in that contest. And with what just came out on ESPN, and of course, if you were following the Donaghy story.
Now, I have not followed this today. I got tied up with other things, so bring me up to speed.
Sure. Well, basically, the NBA's official line has always been single rogue ref, never fixed any games, but may have been influencing some calls.
Duh. Which
That's
is, by the way,
and
influencing calls is fixing games. Okay.
Sure. But what the ESPN article was basically saying is, no, these are the games he fixed. This is how he fixed them. These are the calls in those games that went against the teams down the stretch. And, yes, there may well have been other officials involved.
Well, look, of course there were.
And the number one name that always gets brought up is Scott Foster.
Who's still working.
Who worked last night in the Rockets-Lakers game and again, as someone who had a little bit of Lakers in my pocket, I didn't mind the calls. But the calls, James Harden got called for 4 offensive fouls last night. That's all you need. He got a 6th foul call on an offensive foul with 1.5 minutes left.
The explanation at the time that was offered by Donaghy for these phone calls to Foster was that they were discussing wardrobe.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
it's
there's nothing to be said for that.
Sublimely ridiculous that you almost can't come up with a comment on that.
And there's no need to come up with a comment on that. I mean, there's just as there are issues, today and yesterday with MLB being involved with the Action Network. And MLB, whose testimony to this day is still gambling will ruin us. It's the end of the product. It's the worst possible thing you can have for baseball. And they're buying in.
Of course.
So it's not like we haven't seen unbelievable levels of hypocrisy from basically, the mainstream sports world forever when it comes to, gaming questions and when it comes to fixing questions, for that matter. And the NBA, in my mind, they still got some splaining to do.
Well, we might be getting one good thing out of the NBA. They appear to be on their way. At least it's up now to the Players Association to go along with this, lowering the draft age back to 18.
What do you think about this? Because I have such mixed feelings about it.
Look, it's up to the player, the individual, if he wants to turn pro and go to college. It should never have been mandated that, no, you can't turn pro. And the argument I've always heard is, well, this is not good for the kids who have this delusional attitude that they're ready for the NBA, and it ends up costing them a career. Well, for every one you name who ends up still getting paid, despite the fact that they don't develop into good players, I'll give you a guy who went to college that could have been drafted, it would have been drafted, and ended up having his stock go down because he wasn't that good to the point where he didn't get paid at all.
Which, if you're an NBA fan, you want that college vetting. If you're sitting as an NBA GM
from a fan
or an NBA
standpoint, I got no problem with that. I like seeing the guys play college basketball as well. But the point is, it's a free country. You're 18. You should be able to turn pro if you want.
Then why don't? Then how come you can't do it in the NFL?
I wish they'd do it in the NFL. I don't think the NFL would draft anybody at that age because generally they're not going to be physically developed enough to withstand the rigors of the NFL, and it's a much more complex game. The NFL is way more complex than basketball.
But inevitably, what you would see the college football game start to deteriorate, and the NFL and kids absolutely, the number one college quarterback's going pro. And the number 2 college quarterback is going pro. And then 5 years in, the number 12 college quarterback is going pro.
I don't think that would happen.
Why not?
Because the developmental skills aren't there as a rule. I mean, you have one. There might be an exception, and I'll give you an exception right now. And he should be able to turn pro. The kid at Clemson, there is no reason whatsoever for Lawrence to be back at college for what, 2 more years?
Well, this is America. You just told me this is America, and it's fine.
Right. He should be able to turn pro.
Here's a guy that would be the number 1 pick tomorrow.
Yes.
If the draft was tomorrow.
He should be able to turn pro. Why shouldn't he? I can't. There's no reason that I can come up with to deny him the right to go earn a living.
This is the reason that I can come up with, and I think it's a legit. I'm not saying that I'm not sold on this position, but I'm saying there is a legitimate reason. You can say, well, just because it's America, you can do this and that and the other. The answer is the leagues have a right to protect themselves, and the leagues have a right to make their product as good as possible.
Right. But
for the fans,
that's up to each individual
and
team.
for the bettors.
That's,
having a kid go to college for even a year is a benefit to the NBA. The kids get a year of development, and some kids turn out to be not as good as you thought they were going to be.
That's true. But the flip side of it is, I'll give you Steven Zimmerman as an example. Steven Zimmerman, had he been able to come out after high school, is a first-round draft choice.
Sure.
Where'd he end up?
I haven't heard his name on it.
Didn't even get drafted, as far as I know. Did he get drafted? I don't know. Because his stock went down. So that's the flip side of it.
Which is good for the NBA to be able to vet these guys.
Well, yeah, but I understand that. But this isn't.
And then you talk about maturity levels and coming out of high school. I mean, can you imagine coming out of high school and going around with and all your teammates are over 21?
Yeah, I understand.
It's not an optimal scenario, and I can understand where Adam Silver and company is saying, you know what, just because Zion got hurt last night, that's the ultimate knee jerk. The one guy got hurt, and it's a grade 1 knee sprain.
It was a coincidence. Okay, yeah. This had been in the works anyway. And by the way, I do think it's going to go back down to 18 because the bottom line is I'm not disagreeing with you saying it's good for the NBA, good for the NFL, good for whoever. But you can't have different sets of rules for different sports, first of all. Major League Baseball,
there's always different sets of rules for different sports.
Well, the thing is, if a kid wants to turn pro at 18 and play baseball, he can do it. You can't tell me that it should be different from any other sports. And the bottom line is...
So why 18? Why not 16?
No, 18 is...
Why?
Because 18 is an adult.
Based on what?
Well, you have to draw a line someplace.
Why? Once you start down, okay, well, the 19-year-olds, and this is Amero, the 18-year-olds, you've got the kid on America's Got Talent who's 12. Why can't the basketball player who's an exceptional at the age of 16 play, or the European come in and play in the NBA at that age then.
I get that, but it should be, to me, come up with something that makes sense and is
Once
fair.
you start talking common sense, you're not getting lawyers involved, and all of this gets written up by lawyers. It's nothing to do with common sense. It's like, what can we define and what can we make legal and survive whatever court challenges are going to come? It has nothing to do with what's right or wrong.
In any event, I think once the Players Association signs off on this, full student athletes who are there only to play basketball and for no other reason whatsoever will just go ahead and start earning a living.
Well, what does this mean for the likes of Coach K and Coach Calipari and the like?
They can go back to developing 2 or 3. Look, it doesn't mean that some kids will get ready after 2 years. Some kids will go to college anyway. I think you'll get kids who actually want to go to college, which to me is a good thing.
No. Not that it's not a good thing. All it's going to be is a kid that if you're going to be a lottery pick or a first-round pick out of high school, you're going to go
most of the time,
and if
yes.
you're not, so what it's going to be is you're just going to get the kids that weren't good enough.
Okay.
Nothing to do with whether they want to go to college or not.
To me, Zion Williamson, by the way, there was a shoe malfunction, right? So that was, but the fact is, if Zion Williamson wanted to turn pro coming out of high school, he should have been able to, and now he will. Anyway, let's go to...
Feisty.
Oh, this is interesting. And I'm not a blind angle player, but look at this thing. NBA first game back from the All-Star break. For 2 years, it was like 24-3 to the under. Then last year, it lost a little bit. It was like 5-8 or something last year. 5-1 to the under last night. So is this something you start to look at as, okay, I got to have to start following this coming out of the All-Star break?
It's certainly something to pay attention to and something to pay attention to tonight with all these teams obviously coming back this evening with their first game back. But at the same time, for you say, all right, there are a lot of teams that didn't shoot well last night.
Right.
But just as out of sync as the offenses are, the defenses are often a step slow as well. So it's not something that I bet blindly, and it's not something that I'm afraid to step in front of. In fact, there was one over on tonight's card that I liked, and I got involved with that.
Fridays, MJ Christensen 4 at 4.
1, 2. Bring it to the four.
Put them fours up. Put the fours up, I said. Do it right now.
Tonight's action is just around the bend, and the guys want to get your night off to a great start.
4.
It's the Las Vegas Sports Line's 4 at 4.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Unbelievable.
And we started off with the Spurs and Raptors under. One of the better matchups on tonight's NBA board.
Sure. And if obviously the ESPN game, and a game where it's not just DeMar DeRozan returning back to Toronto and Kawhi Leonard facing off against his other team. It's also the two Gasol brothers now.
Yes.
With Marc Gasol having recently joined the Raptors. And, boy, you read the quotes coming out of Nick Nurse's mouth. He's really excited about the way this team looks right now. Talking about the flexibility that Toronto has with their roster. They can go big, they can go small. And he talked a little bit about pushing some pace, which happened obviously in the first meeting. DeRozan had the first and only triple-double of his career and, led the Spurs to what was a pretty big upset win at the time with Toronto playing great ball. Raptors have continued to play great ball at home. Total 227. This is the one game that I did like over. I got a little bit of a better number than that, and I put a few shekels.
Denver will be at Dallas tonight. Nuggets taking on the Mavericks. Obviously, these are two teams that are trying to... Well, Nuggets are going to make the playoffs. The Mavericks are trying to make the playoffs. What happens in Dallas tonight?
Dallas is no longer trying to make the playoffs. Dallas, mortgaged their season. They traded away 4 of their 5 starters.
They did.
And went for Porzingis. And since that happened, they played 4 games. They've lost 3 of them by double digits, and the one that they won came against the Blazers. They were down 15 in the fourth, and Portland didn't hit a shot the final 10 minutes of that contest.
So Dallas, a team, we don't like to use this term, tank mode?
Well, there's some questions whether Doncic's going to play tonight. And Luka, the money poured in on Denver, expecting, on the rumor. I have not yet heard the news, so at this point, he is officially listed as questionable.
Jazz and Thunder will match up. Utah will hopefully, if you're a Utah fan, make their late season kick using the altitude to their benefit at home, but they're not at home tonight. They will be down in Oklahoma City to face the Thunder.
Yeah, OKC, boy, they're being power rated truly like the second best team.